Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So for any of you who have your electronic devices with you and which have Prabhupada's books on them, you can look this up. We are going to read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. And we will read verse 24, which I'll just read myself, but feel free to look on your device if you've got it there. 2:3:24. Tadashvasaram hridayam vatedam yad grihyamanaya harinavateyai na vikriye tata yadad vikaro netre jalam gatra ruheshu harsha. Translation. Certainly that heart is steel-framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on end. Let's just repeat it responsibly, please. You can repeat after me. Certainly that heart is steel-framed.
Certainly that heart is steel-framed,
which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration,
which in spite of chanting the Lord's holy name with concentration,
does not change when ecstasy takes place.
Does not change when ecstasy takes place.
Tears fill the eyes.
Tears fill the eyes.
And the hairs stand on end.
And the hairs stand on end.
Yes. And there's a somewhat extensive purport by Prabhupada, not extremely long, but it's longer than average, so please pay attention. We should note with profit that in the first 3 chapters of the second canto, a gradual process of development of devotional service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in his universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as the Supersoul in every heart and everywhere in every atom of the material universe. The system of Pancha Upasana, recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man, is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal Supersoul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They're all nicely described in the second chapter. But in the third chapter, which is actually what we're at the end of here, in the third chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. And the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested herein in relation to the change of heart. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So with the progress of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment, by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vidhi bhakti, or regulated devotional service by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands, and the legs, as already explained here and before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel-framed, for it is not melted even when there's chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties, and if they're properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of Godhead. If the reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offences only. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offences at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally, trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating the above symptoms for cheap appreciation. Not only Vishwanath Chakravarti but also Srila Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotees, prakrita sahajas, but the pseudo-symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo-devotees addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above-mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. And for this reason, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. When Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda Roy of Kavor on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms, but because of the presence of some non-devotee Brahmins who were attendants of the Roy, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they're not visible even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real, steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, shanti, utilization of every moment in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, avyata kalatvam, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly, namagane sadaruchi, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, pritis tadvasati stale, complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness, mana shunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava stage, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious, so much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. As such, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental taste of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in the eyes, trembling, perspiration, or unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with a pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits. Otherwise, they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return on the return path home, back to Godhead, will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures, directed by a realized devotee. Hare Krishna. Let me just read that verse again. Talashmasaram hridayam vatedam yadgriyamanayar harinamadeyai navikriyatata yada vikaro netrejalam gatra ruheshu harsha. Certainly that heart is steel-framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on end. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Caitanya Swami Namade Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shrikavadi Vastutyade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu yevacha Patitana Radhanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Yes, it's a very important and quite famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is making a few very foundational and significant, even essential points about the development of Krishna consciousness and things which are contrary to the development of Krishna consciousness. So there's a number of points here. We could have a little seminar just on this verse and purport, actually. One thing I wanted to mention, in case you didn't in case you did catch it, actually, if you were in one of these worlds which some devotees sometimes go into during Srimad Bhagavatam class, where things do not register, so much, you might not have even noticed it. But if you're listening, you would have, and it might have struck you that Srila Prabhupada talks about the system of Pancha Upasana, of focusing on five certain things, in relation to the Lord. And one of them was, he says, and at last, the impersonal super soul. Some of you caught that. Did you catch that? Sort of. Anyway, impersonal super soul. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. It doesn't mean impersonal like Brahman. The Brahma Jyoti is impersonal. It's just, total. It's got nothing to do really with personality. Whereas the super soul, it has certainly got something to do with personality, the personality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the thing is, the super soul is just a partial manifestation of the Lord, and particularly the most personal aspects of the nature of the Lord are not displayed by the super soul. What we mean by that, what is meant by that, is that actually it's just an interesting little point. It's expressed by Srila Jiva Swami, if I remember correctly, in Paramatma Sandhava, that he discusses Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And he raises the question, first of all, what is Brahman? And he answers that Brahman means Krishna, minus his form and minus his personality. That's Brahman. That's what it is. It's not another thing. It's Krishna. But very specific manifestation, minus the form, minus the personality. So then next is, what is Paramatma, the super soul? The super soul is Krishna with his form, but minus his personality. Whereas Bhagavan is Krishna with his form and with his personality. Personality meaning how he thinks and feels and acts and conducts himself, and just his being in his pastimes, loving pastimes with the Lord. All his different qualities, which are then displayed in his pastimes, and which mix together. And this is the personality of Godhead. Whereas super soul is the Lord, but he's just in something like management mode. And just management of the conditioned souls. Seeing that you get your karma and you get your karma. And it's really not got much, if anything, but at least not much to do with how he feels as a person and how he feels in relationships and conducts himself and expresses himself and manifests his individuality, his personal nature in all sorts of interactions and so on and so forth. In the super soul, of course, he is caring for the living entities. It's not like he's just devoid of any real personal characteristics, but just on a very simple level. You've got such and such karma, okay. No reaction from the Lord. It's good, it's bad, I like it, I don't like it. It's just, you got that karma, you get it. And you have got that karma, you get it. Yes. Yes, what's that verse? 13:23, Bhagavad Gita. What's the first word? Anumanta. Anyway, I will refer to my omniscient computer. Yeah. 13:23. Here it comes. 13:23. Upadrashta numanta cha bharata bhokta maheshvara paramatmeti chap yukto dehesmin purushapara. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the Supreme Proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and is known as the Super Soul. So that's the Super Soul. Upadrashta, Anumanta. Upadrashta. Drashta, of course, refers to seeing. Upadrashta, overseeing, and Anumanta, permitting. That's all he's doing. So therefore, in that context, he can be, and Prabhupada refers to him there as being impersonal, but just in the sense of being very, very partially personal in terms of what his real nature is. His real nature is extremely personal. I mean, it's sort of like sometimes devotees, any devotee really, I was going to say the temple president, but I don't want to point any fingers. But some devotees very busy, and they're just racing around, they're just doing this and doing that, and they're all over the place, and they're trying to get things done. And you approach them, Prabhu, could we perhaps discuss something? No, I'm too busy. And then that busy devotee is accused sometimes of being impersonal. This happens. It's not uncommon. Someone treated me in an impersonal way. Doesn't mean they're just not persons, but they're less than, what we would normally expect or hope for in terms of personalness. You follow the idea? So, okay, otherwise, of course that's sort of by the way. We're trying to focus here on the chanting of the holy names and particularly Japa. And I can report to all you nice devotees that today I was sitting here, roughly, and I was chanting. I was definitely, I would say pretty much practically doing my best to chant. I mean, I really I really tried to get into it. And it was, I found it was just great for me. But I was from time to time just glancing around and seeing how the others appeared to be doing. And I didn't notice anyone with, as the verse says, tears filling their eyes. I did not notice one. I was looking.
There was a few tears in the kitchen when the spider
that's, yes. But that's a different type of emotional condition. Ecstasy. Well, that's, what is it? Baya. Baya, yeah. Or what's the other one? Like horror?
Ghastliness.
Ghastliness, yeah. It's a spider, that big. And I'm only a human being weighing 500 times more. Just one false step, and that's the end. And even maybe totally unnoticed. But, oh. Anyway, I don't know who it was, and it's okay. You're still a nice devotee, whoever you are. We all have our little hiccups. Alright, so yeah, I didn't notice anyone crying. I didn't notice any hair standing on the end. See, it won't stand on the end. Yeah. Right. So is that a problem? Well, it could be a problem, actually, but it's definitely not necessarily a problem. Prabhupada in the purport, and I actually checked through the purport of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami, and they all make, it's amazing actually, how Srila Prabhupada's purport is just the same as, but expanded, both Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami. And they all make the same point about the imitators, sometimes, for whatever reason, someone tries to, in actually a Krishna conscious or religious context, they try to display such symptoms. But they're just trying, it's artificial. It's not like it comes and you can't stop it. But they imitate. It's like actors in the movies. I sincerely hope you don't watch the movies, particularly Bollywood. Hollywood might be one thing, because sometimes they try to be serious, but Bollywood. Boy meets girl. Things get all fired up. Parents object. Boy and girl still meet, and what to do. And, it's a bit of a panic. Boy and girl somehow end up in park. Orchestral music starts playing. Many more boys and girls emerge from behind the trees in the park. And everyone's dancing like mad. And suddenly the orchestra just sort of dissolves into nowhere, along with the other boys and girls. And in the end, mum and dad say, okay, it's all right. this is slightly X-rated actually, but I was on a flight from Mumbai to South Africa many years ago, means like 15 probably. And there was an Amitabh Bachchan film playing, and in those days you don't have your own screen, it's just the big screen. So you kind of can't avoid at least sometimes seeing what's happening there. So, I just sort of looked at it a bit. And it was, Amitabh Bachchan. And Amitabh Bachchan, the story was, older man meets younger girl. This is a variation. Normally they have a normal sort of little variation in age, but this is now late middle-aged man meets a young woman. And I realized that Bollywood is hopeless when I somehow or other, I can't remember how I stumbled on the name of the girl as she was portraying herself in the movie. You know what her name was? Fasten seat belts. Please don't be offended. Her name was, in the movie, Sexy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Oh, hi, Sexy. Please, Krishna. Okay, where were we? We were somewhere else.
You were talking about saying you didn't see any symptoms.
Yeah. Right. So, should we worry or not?
Imitating. You were talking about
imitating. Oh, yeah, okay. Yes. In 1973, a group of us, Prabhu Prabhu was the leader, Mahavishnu Maharaj, Janananda Maharaj, Bhakti Vrajendrananda Maharaj, Parthasarathi Maharaj, and maybe there was one other, and my humble self. We went on travelling Sankirtan to Birmingham, Wolverhampton area. And we stayed with one pleasant Hindu family in Wolverhampton. And it was Granny, one Granny, and then the husband and wife, and the husband and wife's few, like 2 or 3 young children, like preschool, around that sort of age. So there we were. And in the evenings we would have a kirtan. So we're having a kirtan, and they had this Laddu Gopal deity named Bal Mukunda. So Bal Mukunda was there on the altar, and so we had a kirtan in front of the altar. And Granny, in the middle of, like a normal rousing kirtan as the devotees have, Granny lost it. Totally. Granny was on the floor in the middle of us, crawling, meaning pulling herself along the carpet towards the altar. And then she reached the altar, and then she's trying to sort of pull herself up to reach Bal Mukunda, but sliding down. And then trying to pull herself up, but sliding down. And tears and wailing. It was quite a program. We just carried on. And then we finished the kirtan, and Granny went off, and then we sat down in that same, like the living room, and then the children came, and the children picked up Bal Mukunda and started throwing Bal Mukunda around the room, until Bal Mukunda, they were throwing, Bal Mukunda was bouncing off the walls and onto the floor, and Granny walked through and just ignored it all. And then it was fairly clear. it's not real. I mean, it wasn't real. Yeah. Because, supposedly great feeling for the Lord in his deity form. But then, as she walked through, Balmakunda went sort of flying past her face to bounce off the wall. No reaction. So, these types of things happen. Even Prabhupada is said to have said in one such situation where he was present in the temple premises, not in the temple room, but one gentleman in the temple room was sort of going through the same type of thing. And Prabhupada said, the devotees came to Prabhupada and asked what to do. And I have been told that Prabhupada said, give him a good kick. And if he continues, then it's okay. If he objects to being kicked, know that it's not okay. It's an imitation. So when the imitators imitate, then the point, as the verse is stating, the heart is not changing. It's just an imitation. The heart is not changing, and therefore later on you can understand that when you see the display of mundaneness in whatever way. Either you see them going off to have a smoke, or just walking through the room while Bal Mukunda's flying around, or something like that, sitting avidly watching Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, or some related type of presentation. Yeah. And then anyone, at least someone who's a little tuned in, will understand, wait a minute, this is not real. It's not to be taken seriously. Yeah. So what we want, and Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, what we want and need, is that the heart will change. That, of course, is a certain type of situation with imitation and so on. We may well not imitate, but still tears may not come from our eyes. And of course, tears coming from the eyes, that's very high level. But one way or another, even if tears at this point are not coming from the eyes, we do want to see that the heart is changing. It doesn't have to be, immediately tears flowing from the eyes spontaneously. But we want to see that the heart is changing in the sense of, on one hand, a loss of interest in material life, and on the other hand, an increase of real interest in the Lord, in his well-being. Means we should serve him so he is comfortable and happy and well-fed and nicely situated. And we should be concerned to spread his glories. We should be concerned to understand him better. On one hand, and then not concerned about the material circumstances and how much material enjoyment we're getting or not getting. There will be, as the heart changes, there will be a spontaneous reduction in interest in material existence. Yes. There will be a number of things, actually. all of them step by step. But a number of things, and Prabhupada lists them out here. These are things from a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The verse itself means like the Sanskrit, is not quoted, as I recall, no, it's not quoted, in Nectar of Devotion, but the translation of the verse is definitely quoted in the beginning devotees of the 18th chapter of Nectar of Devotion. Yeah. The 8 or 9 classic symptoms of advancement which culminate in the presence, in their full manifestation as being indicative of having reached the level of bhava. But prior to that, step by step, in Krishna consciousness, things go step by step. It's not that, at least these deeper types of things, the real change of heart on the long-term basis, they come step by step and not so much overnight. So, what are these things that we should be looking for in ourselves to see, to understand? Am I making some progress, or how am I doing? Am I making progress, or on the other hand, am I perhaps going backwards? If, certain of these symptoms, they were coming a bit, but then I see now they're going, and I'm again manifesting certain material symptoms. So that these classic symptoms are as follows. Let's see. And Robert hasn't actually listed them all out here. Let me just give me a couple of seconds to refer to Nectar of Devotion and get the full list here. Character of one in ecstatic love, which means bhava. So, always anxious, there are 9, always anxious to utilize one's time in the devotional service of the Lord. Write it down. It will be there in the exam. Well, when we do the full thing, we do have an exam actually. But you've got to note these. Utilization of time. Prabhupada says the devotee does not like to be idle. He wants service always, 24 hours a day without deviation. There's a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and George Harrison. And I don't know if it was recorded or not, but one of the devotees present told us afterwards, in Bhaktivedanta Nana, they're talking about sleeping. And George Harrison says to Prabhupada, to the effect that, sleeping is such a waste of time. We could be doing useful things, but we sleep. And Prabhupada replies, yes, I also sleep sometimes. Prabhupada says, after lunch, I often lie down for a while. And Prabhupada says, when I lie down, I think, here I go, wasting my time again. So, interesting little point is that in terms of the verse, utilizing your time is not the first one. It's the second one. But, for whatever reason, Prabhupada puts it here as the first one. Okay, so these are symptoms of bhava when fully manifest. But, in the earlier stages, like us, all of us, the gradual manifestation of these symptoms, 1, 2, some, all, the gradual manifestation we can just take as being little signs that, some mercy has come, some purification has been taking place. Okay. So, first is then utilizing time. Second is always reserved and perseverant. Always reserved and perseverant. Which, anyway. There are stories of devotees who are perseverant. Haridas Thakur, you know that story, beaten in the marketplaces. I don't know if you know the story about Sridham from, Bandiravan. Krishna was going to Mathura the next day, and he went and visited different devotees and said, I'm going, but don't worry, I'll be back tomorrow. So Sridham said, I've got a feeling you're not coming back tomorrow. And Krishna said, no, I'm coming back tomorrow. If not tomorrow, at least the next day. And Sridham said, but I just have the feeling you're not coming back. And Krishna said, no, if not the next day, the day after. And eventually Krishna said, listen, just wait here, all right? And just see. Just wait here, like right where that black spot is in the tile. Just wait there and you'll see. But Krishna didn't come back the next day, or the day after, or the day after that. Even after 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, Krishna didn't come back. But Sridham had not moved. This is perseverant. 1 year, 3, 5, 10, 50. Krishna had not returned. Sridham was still there. Finally, Krishna returned as Lord Chaitanya after 450 years. Sridham had turned into a deity. And Lord Chaitanya said, see, I told you I'd return. This is perseverant. Okay, third one. Detached from material attraction. Fourth one, humility. Prabhupada says he doesn't long for any material respect in return for his activities. It means humility. 5, always certain Krishna will give him or her mercy. 6, always eager to serve the Lord. 7, very much attached to the chanting of the holy names. 8, always eager to describe the qualities of the Lord. And 9, very pleased to live in a place where the Lord's pastimes are performed. These are the 9 symptoms of bhava when they're fully manifest, as given by Srila Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So he gives that list before he lists, and he gives, great lists of emotional qualities, you could say emotional qualities. Before any of those, the Sattvika bhavas, Anubhavas, Vibhavas, and other bhavas, before that, he gives these. Because like we said, for example, with our poor little Balmukunda, it's easy to imitate. If you go to movies, you see the people crying, the boy and the girl, and their parents object, as usual, and the girl cries. And you must know, she just knows how to do it. And if you want to learn, you can learn. Yeah. Right-o. So for ourselves then, we should understand that, emotional symptoms is one thing. These types of more like down-to-earth types of symptoms, we should be looking at ourselves to see, how am I doing? We have to make little evaluations from time to time and, compare how we're doing now compared to some time before. Not that we just get into self-consciousness, but from time to time we have to step back and have a little look at ourselves and see, how am I doing? And if, emotional symptoms, that's one thing, let's not worry about that at this point. But these other symptoms, if they are manifesting, then gradually, good. If they're not, what does it mean, as Prabhupada describes here? Well, it means your heart is steel framed, which means you're committing offenses. That's what it means. Because, Krishna is not whimsical. The process of devotional service is not whimsical. If you do things right enough, you will get result. It's not that everyone does the same thing. Some get the result and some don't. If you do things right, basically you will get result. If you don't get result, it doesn't mean that, Krishna doesn't care or there's something wrong with the process. It means there's something wrong with you. And what could that be? Offense, basically. You're doing something offensive, which means the 10 offenses. And the, so to speak, 11th offense of being inattentive. Yeah. Otherwise, if you're doing things not just right, because right is just really pretty cool, but at least right enough, you'll definitely get result, and you'll feel it, and you'll see it, and it's clear. So, committing offenses. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kadamini makes an interesting little sort of analysis of this situation. And he makes the point that we may be committing offenses, but we may not know, because we're not very well educated in Krishna consciousness. That's a possibility. Or we may just be a little dull and not clear enough in our perceptions. things like this. So he makes the point, and when I read it, particularly the first time many years ago, I thought, wow, that's interesting. He makes the point that someone may say, but I'm not committing offenses. I'm not. But then he says, never say that. Never say that. Because, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Because if you're not getting a result, it's the only really possible reason. There's hardly any other possible reason. And if you then see that this is my position, I'm not really progressing, then, and it's because of offenses, then you need to do something about it. You need to evaluate yourself and see, what am I doing wrong or not doing right? And as Prabhupada said, if you're not intelligent enough to understand, ask someone who is. So if you can't see it, one of the worst people, one of the worst persons to evaluate you is you. Not always, but it definitely happens because we are prone to be extremely charitable towards ourselves. In fact, there's a famous saying which very few people are aware of, but it's a really good one. We evaluate ourselves according to our intentions, but we evaluate others in terms of their actions. Of course, you can't really know another person's intentions unless you go into some whole discussion about it. But you know your intentions. That's interesting, isn't it? It's not even Krishna. It is Krishna conscious, but it's just from a mundane source. We evaluate ourselves according to our intentions, but we evaluate others according to their actions. So we should try to evaluate and see, what am I doing wrong? Because if result is not coming, particularly if, the opposite of result is coming, we're actually getting into a bad state of consciousness. We're getting kind of messed up spiritually. Our Krishna consciousness is becoming quite unstable. That's really serious. It's really serious. Something has to be done about it. And the only thing that it can be caused by generally is offenses. Right. For just an example, Lord Chaitanya received initiation and asked, what should I do? It's a bit of a long story. He asked Ishvara Puri, what should I do? Ishvara Puri basically told him, Hari Nam, Hari Nam. He repeated that verse to him. And so Lord Chaitanya said, right. And he did it. He went off to his place, chanting. And he chanted the whole night. But almost immediately, if not actually immediately, amazing ecstatic symptoms just totally overwhelmed him to the point that he found that he couldn't chant properly. He couldn't pronounce, because as one of the symptoms we read somewhere, there's failing of the voice, Prabhupada says. It's in emotional symptom. So his voice was failing. Just like in the Rath Yatra, Lord Chaitanya would come in front of Lord Jagannath and try to call out, Jagannath, Jagannath. But all that would come out was, Jajagaga, Jajagaga, Jajagaga. So Lord Chaitanya came back the next morning to Ishvara Puri and complained, what sort of mantra have you given me? What is this mantra? I think I'm doing something wrong, because when I try to chant, I can't chant. Please help me. And Ishvara Puri understood the situation and just laughed and said, congratulations, my dear child, you have perfected your life. So, Lord Chaitanya, of course, Lord Chaitanya is Lord Chaitanya, and whatever he does, it's on a different level from us. But still, in principle, the point applies that his chanting was free of offense. Yeah, compared to ours. Therefore, immediately, these just incredible symptoms overpowered him, practically absolutely. So, why is it not happening to us, at least in terms of these, you could say, more simple symptoms? It's because of offense. Therefore, part of our little retreat here is to just remind everyone that we should be knowledgeable of the offences. We should really try to avoid the offences. And if we see that offences are encroaching on our lives, our minds, our thinking processes, then we should know, I have a problem which must be addressed. Then if you can address it yourself and just pull yourself together and get focused again, okay. But if you can't do that, it has sort of reached a point it's a bit too much, and it's like just regularly coming onto you, then you may have to take shelter of other devotees and get direction, supervision, and get help to get sort of dragged out of the hole that you've fallen into. So there you go, devotees. Some words from Srimad Bhagavatam about chanting and, better chanting, not so good chanting, and how to look at our chanting. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.